Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Drop Your Noise. If you're new to this show, hi, my name is Kirti. Welcome. And every so often, I invite individuals from around the world to share their different perspective about a theme or a topic that is happening in this day and age, in these modern times. But before we get started, I do have to apologize to those who I always promise that I will bring something out weekly. And it's actually led me to talk about this week's episode, which is really about burnout. Now, I made a promise to myself many years ago that I would not exhaust myself and stop enjoying the work that I do. I really enjoy podcasting. But I am not so good yet at getting my productivity or my method down to have like a consistent flow. What happens with me is I get very creative in my mind on certain projects, and then I forget that system I created and I want to follow, I always unfollow it. I don't know why. Do you have that as well, where you create all these routines and stuff and then you still end up not following it? So that is what really happened to me. A couple of months ago, I received a brief that I was going to deliver a keynote and a workshop for my island, Curacao, where I'm from, on the topic of compassion care. I was also moving into a new country. So I was in London and I had to pack up and I also have to figure all my paperwork out. So I really had good intentions. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this routine. I'm going to have everything ready, but it just didn't happen. But I also have something that happens very often is that every month I much rather bring something that's pretty relevant to the month. What am I going through or what am I thinking of? And so it just so happens that I wanted to share about my experience going to Curacao and how ironic all of this just kinds of ties in together. In terms of the podcast, I if I bring out every week a podcast, but I don't really feel connected to it, for me, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to you because I want to give you something that is completely genuine from me. And I don't want to just give you something just to give you something. And that when I'm not happy with something, I tend to feel like my energy is zapping away from me. And it made me think about what happened to me many years ago, 11 years ago to be precise, where I had hit a burnout in the career I thought I was so passionate about, that I really loved. And I started to resent my work and I started to feel exhausted. Just the idea of doing it would put me off. And what was happening as well was that I was listening consistently to individuals who were struggling and suffering with their daily life. And I always felt so guilty that I couldn't say no, that I would listen, but inside of me, I didn't know how to process it. But my energy was just low to the point that I had none left. And it started showing up in my physical body. So I went to the doctors and I said, hey, I'm struggling with this and I don't know what to do. I had never told them I was also feeling very resentful towards my career. And I felt kind of ashamed to feel that because who says that? Hey, I'm a yoga teacher, but I resent helping others. It just felt like such a um, shame that I was carrying. And what made it even more layered into all of this was when I would get to be told, hey, but Kirti, you have all the tools to calm down and relax. So you have all the tools. So when I went to ask for help, I felt I was dismissed. So it's ironic that 10 years later, the tools that I wish I had, I was actually seeing doctors talking about it. So some ways I was really happy, but in other ways I was like, well, kind of wanted this 10 years ago, but these were also the same tools that I was told, go and work on them to figure things out for yourself. So that was a very interesting experience in itself. But anyway, so after that, I traveled around the world and I did use indeed the tools that I had, and one of them being the Lojong practice. And from there, I have written books about it and recently also written card decks, 59 pause phrases, so how we can work with ourselves from within. And while I know this is it's a big milestone, on the other hand, when I was at this conference now and I looked around the room, you could see it was almost like looking at my own mirror and seeing that exhaustion that I had felt many years ago when we were working in a very caregiving space. Individuals, when they are in this very caregiving space, they're constantly thinking about somebody else. What are they going through? How can I be of better service? How can I alleviate the suffering inside? And so I'm very careful when we talk about the word empathy and sympathy. So I decided, okay, you know what? What did I want many years ago? And what did I need to do to master it? And I felt very lonely when I was exhausted. I was overthinking. I was overwhelmed. I held a lot of things inside me that it was building up, and hence it became like resentment. So I decided I was going to be, for the first time, going to share my story with the community. And I opened up. And for the first time, I felt at peace with with what I was sharing, with my story. And essentially, I just turned the whole room around and I wanted them to communicate with one another, from parents to caregivers and volunteers, the medical caregivers I'm talking about. And why did I want that is because all three are very important. They play a very key role in a child's care. And because they all play a very key role, sometimes we get caught up in our own role that we don't acknowledge what each other roles are and how it actually works together like a puzzle. And if we work together, not being lonely and isolated in our thinking, trying to figure out how to help and how to work with individuals. But by working together, we work much easier and can create more understanding how to be more supportive to the little one that's really involved. And for me, I really love that with the community that's been built in the Ronald McDonald Charity organization. When I looked at all these amazing volunteers, they really come from a place of such generosity to care for others. But with that, I could understand the exhaustion that goes with it and the loneliness and trying to figure out how do I help somebody because I'm not a medical person, but nor am I a parent. And so I shared with them the tools that could help them gain energy back. And I found myself surprisingly sharing about the act of appreciation and finding joy. If I step back from everything and I look at the world and how it's leading, we are trying so hard, putting so much pressure on ourselves to achieve something outside of us that we're disconnecting from inside of us. When I look at these caregivers or volunteers, or even myself 10 years ago, placing so much pressure on the self to be very helpful, to be useful, to be able to achieve something, that pressure can be a very lonely place. And we don't like to talk about it because we feel like it's a shame, like it's something that we should be ashamed about or that we're broken because we cannot achieve these goals or these expectations we have on ourselves. And actually, if you look at it, that's the heart of burning out is that we're chasing to reach certain expectations within ourselves that when we don't, we put more pressure on ourselves. And too much pressure takes energy out of you. And when you take too much pressure on yourself and you take all that energy out of you, you're struggling then to replenish yourself or give yourself energy back. I think about somebody who's constantly talking in the language, like da 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 da, but da da da, always talking about the problem and never offering a solution. Like they'll any solution you give them, they'll see a problem. They'll see a problem. So their mind is trained to constantly see things in a certain direction, which is ironically why I started this podcast, Drop Your Noise, is because if we keep focusing on just the problem, how will we ever give ourselves an opportunity to see another way, which is a different perspective? So, in that room, you have three stakeholders, right? You have the parent, you had the volunteers, and you had the medical caregivers. All three are taking care of this child from a different perspective. And so having them communicate one another, when we start talking to one another, believe it or not, it takes a lot of pressure off ourselves. That's one. Second of all, if we can speak to each other with more appreciation and less of defense and protective mechanism, if we drop that our resistance, we can start listening better again to one another. So having to give this workshop, I found so much like aha moments in there. I actually wondered who was gaining more, me or or the audience. But for me, this is about compassion. When I think about compassion care, I also think about the quality of conversations we're having with one another, the quality of listening we're having with one another. And this leads me to share with you the guest of this month. His name is Dominic, and I interviewed him in July, not realizing I was going to place him for November's conversation. And it just so happens November happens to be about men's health, and we highlighted a little bit more. And what I liked about Dominic was that he had a very unique perspective on leadership. He used to run the co-living space I used to live in the UK, and it was just after COVID. So he had a lot of different dynamics he had to work with. And I will share more of that in the upcoming episodes. But again, what I was surprised about that he was so calm, I was like, he should have burnt out, but he didn't. And it had a lot to do with his background, with his heritage, and how he brought it into his world. So I want to invite you to this idea of exhaustion, pressure, expectations, or even burnout. When you look at your life, how much pressure are you placing on yourself, on how much you need to do and have to complete? Do you really have to put all that on the plate? Or can you just step back for one moment and hit pause? Just hit pause. Hit pause for one moment and just look at it and ask yourself, why are you doing this the way you're doing it? See, for me, coming full circle with this podcast, I can dish out a podcast every week. But if I'm just dishing out a podcast because I have to be consistent for the algorithms, then my intention is not in the right direction. For me, when I started this, was to support any person, even if it was one person out there, to have a different perspective, to invite a different perspective so that they can evolve in their lives, so they can feel more joy in their lives. And by listening to someone's other stories out there that might shine light into their own, then actually it's not the consistency is in the quality and not in the quantity. So I had to take that pressure off myself. That's why I kind of started off the podcast with it. But also, I need to share one last thing with you, which I never expected. I woke up one morning, Curacao, checked my emails, and I nearly fell off my bed. I mean, literally, when I saw the words, Drop Your Noise has been nominated Podcast of the Year. And I thought, no way. How? I'm an indie podcast. I don't really advertise it out there. And my guests come with like, yes, sure, let's just share and talk. And I loved every one of my guests. And I'm so excited that I got nominated for my guests because each of them have shared their heart, their journey with so much generosity. And so to get that nomination, it doesn't mean much just about the Drop Your Noise podcast, but it shares a lot about how sharing stories from different individuals around the world can really impact somebody out there so much so that they nominated anonymously this podcast to be the podcast of the year. And right now it's undergoing the process of voting. So if you'd like to vote, just send me a comment or DM and I'm happy to share the link out with you. But yeah, I'm very grateful for that. And whoever is that person and is listening, thank you. Appreciate it. Let's get these beautiful, wonderful guest voices out there so that we can encourage individuals to be okay to listen to a different perspective. So that's it. I look forward to sharing next week's guest, Dominic, and thank you for listening to this week's episode. So if you like it, be sure you hit like and subscribe. And if anything, share it out with somebody out there. Not only do we help grow this podcast, but also we can support somebody out there as well. And if you'd like to know more or get more about Drop Your Noise, about the cards, the books, please join our newsletter. Hey, have a good one. Till the next one, take care.